Remember 1980s America? Every home had them. Gadgets covering counters, filling rooms with sounds you can still hear. Then one morning, gone.
Panasonic introduces its electronic clock radios. A gentle chirp.
Vanished so completely you forgot they existed. I'm showing you 30 things that disappeared overnight. Some will break your heart, not because they're gone, but because you forgot they mattered. The cordless phone arrived in American homes like a miracle in the early 1980s, and suddenly you could walk from room to room while talking. My grandmother always said, "I spent 40 years tethered to that wall, and now I can stir the pot and gossip at the same time." These chunky devices with their extendable antennas cost around $100 in 1983, nearly $300 in today's money. But families bought them anyway because freedom felt priceless. By 1989, over 30 million American households owned at least one cordless phone. The range was terrible, maybe 100 feet on a good day, and your neighbor's baby monitor could intercept your calls. The cellular revolution killed them between 2000 and 2005, when cell phones became affordable enough that keeping a landline felt pointless. Today, finding a working cordless phone from the 80s is like discovering a dinosaur bone in your attic. The VCR wars of the early 1980s divided America into two camps, VHS or Betamax. Families paid $800 to $200 for these machines that let you record TV shows and rent movies, a concept so revolutionary that video rental stores sprouted on every corner like mushrooms after rain. Programming the VCR became a generational divider, and that flashing 12 became the universal symbol of technological defeat. By 1990, 70% of American homes had a VCR, making it one of the fastest adopted technologies in history. The DVD player murdered the VCR between 2002 and 2006, and streaming services buried whatever remained. Now, those bulky black boxes sit in thrift stores with $3 price tags, and nobody's buying. Before voicemail, there was the answering machine, a separate device that sat next to your phone and captured messages on a tiny cassette tape. These machines cost $70 to $150 in the mid-1980s, and owning one meant you were sophisticated, busy, important. The best part was screening calls. You'd sit there listening to someone leave a message, deciding in real time whether to pick up or let them think you weren't home. By 1991, 30% of American households had answering machines. People left long, rambling messages because there was no beep to warn them about time limits. Cell phone voicemail killed answering machines around 2005, and suddenly those tapes full of voices from the past became archaeological artifacts that no one had equipment to play anymore. The affordable countertop microwave with mechanical dial timers became standard kitchen equipment during the 1980s. These machines cost $200 to $400 and weighed about 50 pounds. The dial timer made a loud ticking sound as it counted down, and when it hit 0, a bell rang like a tiny alarm clock announcing your hot pocket was ready. By 1986, 60% of American homes had microwaves, up from just 10% in 1980. The digital revolution replaced dial timers with touchpads and LED displays in the 1990s, and those mechanical models disappeared almost overnight. You can still find them at estate sales, their dials stiff from decades of grease, their interiors stained with exploded spaghetti sauce from 1987. The wall-mounted electric can opener was the ultimate symbol of 1980s kitchen convenience, a device that did one job and did it loudly. These contraptions bolted to your kitchen wall, usually under a cabinet, and you'd lift the lever, position your can, and press down while the motor whirred and ground its way around the lid. They cost $25 to $40 and came in harvest gold or almond to match your appliances. Every wall-mounted can opener eventually developed the same problem. The cutting wheel would dull, leaving jagged edges that could slice your finger open. By the mid-1990s, handheld electric can openers and improved manual openers made wall-mounted units obsolete. The real death blow came when cans started featuring pull tabs and pop-tops. Now those mounting brackets remain on kitchen walls in older homes, empty rectangles marking where convenience once lived. But before we go further, ask yourself, how many of these still matter to you today? The flip number clock radio sat on nightstands across America, its mechanical numbers flipping with a satisfying click every minute. These devices combined AM/FM radio with an alarm clock, and the numbers were printed on small cards that physically flipped over. You could hear time passing. They cost $20 to $50 and came in wood grain plastic or chrome. The flip mechanism was hypnotic. Watching those numbers change felt like witnessing time itself move forward. By 1985, nearly every American bedroom had some version of a clock radio. The digital LED displays replaced flip numbers in the late 1980s, and suddenly that mechanical clicking stopped. Modern smartphones killed bedside clock radios entirely, and now those flip number models are vintage collectibles selling for $100 or more to people who miss the sound of time flipping forward. Rotary phones technically preceded the 1980s, but millions remained in service throughout the decade. These heavy bakelite or plastic devices required you to stick your finger in a hole and rotate the dial clockwise for each number. Dialing a number with lots of nines or zeros took forever. They were indestructible, often weighing 5 pounds or more. The satisfying click, click, click of the dial returning to position, the solid bell ring of an incoming call, these were tactile, physical experiences. By 1989, only 15% of American homes still used rotary phones, down from 75% in 1980. The final death came in the early 2000s when digital phone systems couldn't process pulse dialing at all. Now, rotary phones are decorative objects, their mechanisms still functional but useless in a world that's moved beyond their language. The home cassette deck was the heart of 1980s music culture. A double cassette machine that let you record from the radio, copy your friends' tapes, and create mixtapes for people you loved or wanted to impress. These decks cost $100 to $500 depending on features, and Sirius audiophiles spent thousands on high-end models with Dolby noise reduction. You'd sit by the radio with your finger on the record button, waiting for your favorite song to start, trying to press record after the DJ stopped talking, but before the music began, a skill that required perfect timing. By 1987, 75% of American households owned a cassette deck. The CD burner killed cassette decks in the late 1990s, and digital downloads buried whatever remained. Now those dual cassette decks sit in basements with their belts rotted, their heads magnetized beyond repair. The West Bend, stir-crazy, or similar dome-topped popcorn poppers were kitchen staples in the 1980s, sitting on counters and promising movie theater popcorn at home. These devices had a heated base, a motorized stirring arm, and a clear plastic dome that let you watch kernels explode into fluffy white clouds. They cost $25 to $40 and made enough popcorn for a family movie night. The smell filled the house. Butter, salt, and that distinctive popped corn aroma that meant Friday night had officially started. By 1988, these poppers were in 40% of American homes. Microwave popcorn killed them almost overnight in the early 1990s when bags became cheap and convenient enough that cleaning a popper seemed like too much work. Now those dome poppers show up at garage sales, their domes cracked, their stirring arms missing. Rabbit ears, Those adjustable V-shaped antennas that sat on top of your television were essential equipment in the 1980s for anyone who didn't have cable. You'd adjust them constantly, trying to find the angle that brought in a clear picture, often wrapping aluminum foil around the tips to boost the signal. Every TV had different antenna needs. Some required constant adjustment, others found a sweet spot and stayed there for years. By 1985, 60% of American homes had cable TV, and rabbit ears began their decline. The digital television transition in 2009 killed them completely. Analog signals vanished overnight, and suddenly those antennas couldn't pull anything from the air. Modern digital antennas work differently, and nobody calls them rabbit ears anymore. 10 steps forward, yet sometimes. Do you ever wish we could go back, just once, to when life felt real, not digital? The automatic bread machine craze hit America in the late 1980s, promising fresh-baked bread with minimal effort. These countertop appliances cost $100 to $300 and looked like miniature washing machines with viewing windows. You'd dump in flour, water, yeast, and other ingredients, press a button, and 4 hours later, fresh bread would emerge, usually with a weird shape and a paddle hole in the bottom. The smell was intoxicating. By 1992, bread machines were wedding registry staples, and stores couldn't keep them in stock. Then reality set in. The bread was mediocre, the machines were huge, and cleaning the paddle was annoying. By 2000, bread machines were migrating to garage sales and thrift stores. Now, those machines gathered dust in basements, their instruction manuals yellowed, their paddles lost. Turntables in wooden console cabinets were holdovers from the 1970s that persisted through the early 1980s before vanishing almost completely. These furniture-sized units combined a record player, AM/FM radio, and sometimes an 8-track or cassette player, all housed in a wooden cabinet that doubled as an end table. They cost $200 to $600 and weighed over 100 pounds. You'd lift the lid, place a record on the turntable, move the tone arm over, and lower it gently onto the spinning vinyl. By 1983, these consoles were already outdated, replaced by component stereo systems. CDs delivered the final blow in the mid-1980s. The vinyl revival of the 2010s brought turntables back, but the massive wooden consoles never returned. Now they're vintage treasures or have been gutted and converted into bars. The electric knife was the 1980s solution to carving holiday turkeys and roasts. A handheld device with 2 serrated blades that moved back and forth rapidly, slicing through meat like a tiny chainsaw. These gadgets cost $20 to $40 and came in avocado green or harvest gold, stored in special cases that made them look like important surgical equipment. Fathers would ceremoniously plug in the electric knife at Thanksgiving, and everyone would gather around while he carved the turkey with this buzzing, vibrating device. By 1985, 45% of American households owned an electric knife. Then people realized they only used them twice a year, and a good manual knife did the job just as well. By the late 1990s, electric knives had disappeared from most kitchens. Electric typewriters with built-in correction tape were the height of office and home technology in the early 1980s, before personal computers became affordable. These machines cost $300 to $800 and featured automatic correction. You'd backspace, and a white correction tape would cover your mistake before you retyped the correct letter. It felt like magic compared to messy correction fluid. The sound of typing filled offices and studies. The clacking of keys, the ding of the carriage return, the zip of the correction tape. By 1985, word processors began appearing, and by 1990, personal computers had invaded homes and offices everywhere. The typewriter died almost overnight between 1992 and 1995. Now electric typewriters are artistic props or expensive vintage collectibles. If you had an outdoor TV antenna in the 1980s, you probably had a rotator control box, a small device that sat near your TV with a dial and compass display showing which direction your antenna pointed. You'd turn the dial, hear the motor on your roof groan to life, and watch the compass needle rotate as your antenna turned to face different broadcast towers. These boxes cost $50 to $100 plus installation. The rotator box had a satisfying mechanical feel. You'd hear the antenna turning on the roof, watch the needle swing, and hope the picture would clear up. By 1990, cable TV had reached most areas, and rooftop antennas began coming down. The digital TV transition in 2009 made these rotators completely obsolete. Now they're found in old homes, still mounted on walls, their dials frozen, their motors long dead. The slide projector and its accompanying carousel trays were standard equipment for any family that took vacation photos in the 1980s. These machines cost $100 to $300 and sat on special carts or tables projecting 35mm slides onto white screens or blank walls. You'd load 80 or 140 slides into a circular carousel, turn off the lights, and subject your family or guests to a complete vacation retrospective. The projector's fan would hum, the bulb would heat up, and slides would click through one by one while someone narrated, "This is us at the Grand Canyon. This is also us at the Grand Canyon." By 1990, video cameras were replacing still cameras for vacation documentation. Digital photography killed slide projectors completely in the early 2000s. Now those carousels sit in closets full of faded slides from vacations nobody remembers. Electric fondue pots were essential entertaining equipment in the 1980s, holdovers from the 1970s fondue craze that persisted through the decade. These pots cost $30 to $60 and came with long forks for dipping bread, meat, or fruit into melted cheese, chocolate, or hot oil. Fondue parties were sophisticated adult gatherings where people stood around a pot, dipping and chatting. The pots had temperature controls that never quite worked right. The cheese would burn or the chocolate would seize up. But fondue felt European and elegant, like something from a restaurant you couldn't afford. By 1985, fondue parties were declining. The pots migrated to back cabinets, used occasionally, then never. By 2000, they were garage sale staples, often still in their original boxes, barely used. Console televisions in wooden cabinets were living room centerpieces in the early 1980s, massive furniture pieces that weighed 200 pounds or more and required professional delivery. These TVs cost $500 to $2,500 and featured screens of 19 to 25 inches housed in cabinets made of real or simulated wood. They were furniture first, televisions second. The picture quality was terrible by modern standards, fuzzy, with poor color accuracy. 8-track players were dying technology in the 1980s, but many homes still had them built into stereo systems or as separate components. These players used chunky cartridges that held 4 programs of stereo sound, and the tape would automatically switch between programs mid-song, often at the worst possible moment. The cartridges cost $6 to $8. The sound quality was mediocre. The tapes would jam or break, and the players would eat cartridges with alarming frequency. By 1985, 8-track production had essentially stopped, and by 1990, finding blank 8-tracks was impossible. Electric percolator coffee pots were standard kitchen equipment in the early 1980s before drip coffee makers took over. These pots featured a glass knob on top where you could watch the coffee percolate, bubbling up through a tube and spraying over the grounds in a mesmerizing cycle. They cost $25 to $50 and made coffee that was strong, hot, and often bitter from over-extraction. The percolator's rhythmic bubbling sound and coffee aroma meant morning had officially started. Whole-house intercom systems were luxury features in 1980s homes, with wall-mounted stations in every room connected to a master control panel. These systems cost $500 to $2,000 installed and let you communicate between rooms, play music throughout the house, or listen in on your kids without them knowing. They felt futuristic and slightly invasive. You'd press a button, speak into the grill, and your voice would crackle through speakers in other rooms. The sound quality was terrible, tinny and distorted, but it worked. By the mid-1990s, cordless phones made intercoms redundant, and by 2000, cell phones eliminated any remaining use. The telephone shoulder rest was a curved plastic attachment that clipped onto your phone's handset, letting you cradle the phone between your ear and shoulder while your hands stayed free. These simple devices cost $5 to $15 and came in colors to match your phone. They were essential for anyone who spent time on the phone while cooking, writing, or doing anything that required both hands. The shoulder rest would slip off at inconvenient moments, and prolonged use gave you neck pain that chiropractors loved. By the mid-1990s, cordless phones with headset jacks appeared, and by 2000, cell phones with earbuds made shoulder rests completely obsolete. Shower radios with suction cups were bathroom fixtures in the 1980s, letting you listen to music or news while showering. These radios cost $15 to $30 and stuck to tile walls with suction cups that would eventually fail, sending the radio crashing down mid-shower. They ran on batteries that corroded from moisture, and the sound quality was terrible, tinny and echo-prone. But they brought entertainment to the shower, and that felt luxurious. Calculator watches were the height of nerdy cool in the 1980s. Digital watches with tiny calculator buttons that let you do math on your wrist. These watches cost $20 to $100 depending on features, and wearing one meant you were serious about numbers or just wanted to look smart. The buttons were impossibly small, requiring a stylus or the tip of a pen to press accurately. Doing calculations on a calculator watch was slower and more awkward than pulling out an actual calculator, but it felt futuristic. Home paper shredders became popular in the mid-1980s as identity theft fears grew and people wanted to destroy sensitive documents. These machines cost $50 to $150 and sat under desks or in closets, ready to turn credit card offers and bank statements into confetti. They were loud, prone to jamming, and the strips of paper they produced could be reassembled with enough patience. The shredder would grind away, producing bags of paper strips that you'd take to the curb, feeling secure that your information was protected. By 2000, cross-cut shredders appeared, making strip-cut models obsolete. By 2010, digital statements and paperless billing reduced the need for shredding at all. Film rewinders were small devices that rewound 35mm film back into its canister after you finished a roll, faster than your camera's built-in rewinder could manage. These gadgets cost $10 to $20 and saved maybe 30 seconds per roll. Serious photographers kept them in their camera bags, and photo enthusiasts bought them thinking they'd use them constantly. The rewinder would spin the film canister rapidly, making a satisfying whirring sound, and you'd feel productive and professional. Portable televisions with telescoping antennas were the 1980s answer to watching TV anywhere in your house, or theoretically outside, though reception was usually terrible. These TVs featured screens of 5 to 13 inches, ran on batteries or AC power, and cost $80 to $300 depending on whether you wanted color or black and white. The telescoping antenna extended upward like a car antenna, and you'd adjust it endlessly trying to get a watchable picture, rotating it in circles, tilting it at angles, sometimes wrapping aluminum foil around the tip in desperate attempts to pull in a clearer signal. The weight was deceptive. These portable TVs weighed anywhere from 3 to 7 pounds, which doesn't sound like much until you're carrying one from room to room or holding it in your lap for an extended period. They came in black plastic housings with built-in handles on top, making them look like lunch boxes for people whose lunch was television. The screens were protected by thick, convex glass that magnified the image slightly, and the controls, volume, channel selector, brightness, contrast, were analog dials or sliders on the front or side panel, each one requiring fine adjustment to get the picture remotely acceptable. People bought them for bedrooms, kitchens, camping trips, or anywhere a full-sized TV wouldn't fit. Teenagers saved allowance money for months to buy a small black-and-white model they could watch in their rooms, finally gaining independence from family viewing choices. Parents bought them for kitchens so they could watch soap operas or news while preparing dinner, propping them on counters next to cutting boards and mixing bowls. College students packed them for dorm rooms where space was limited and budgets were tight. Campers brought them to RV parks and campgrounds, determined to watch Monday Night Football even while supposedly enjoying nature. The picture quality was grainy at best, terrible at worst, and completely unwatchable under many conditions. Indoor reception depended on proximity to windows, building construction, and mysterious electromagnetic factors that nobody fully understood. You'd find a spot where the picture was clear, mark it with tape on the floor, and that became the TV's permanent location because moving it 6 inches in any direction would turn the picture to static. Outdoor reception was a gamble. Sometimes you'd get perfect reception in a field. Other times you couldn't pull in anything despite being in clear view of broadcast towers. The sound was tinny and came from a single small speaker that couldn't reproduce bass frequencies at all. Voices sounded thin and distant. Music sounded like it was playing through a telephone, and action sequences lost all their impact when explosions sounded like someone crinkling paper bags. You'd turn the volume up to compensate, but that just made the tinny sound louder without making it better, and the speaker would distort and buzz at higher volumes, adding another layer of audio unpleasantness to the experience. Battery life was a constant frustration and expense. Most portable TVs ran on 6 to 8D batteries, which cost $8 to $12 for a set, and would last maybe 3 to 5 hours of viewing, depending on whether you had a black and white or color model. Color TVs drained batteries faster because the color tube required more power, and you could watch the picture dim gradually as the batteries died, the colors fading until you were essentially watching black and white anyway. Smart people kept their portable TVs plugged into AC power whenever possible, using batteries only when absolutely necessary, but that defeated much of the portable purpose. The telescoping antenna was both essential and problematic. It extended upward in segments, each section sliding out and locking into place with a satisfying click until you had a thin metal rod reaching 2 or 3 feet above the TV. This antenna was directional, meaning you had to point it toward the broadcast tower to get the best signal, but nobody knew exactly where the broadcast towers were, so you'd rotate the antenna in slow circles, watching the picture improve and degrade, trying to find the sweet spot. Once found, you'd try to lock the antenna in position, but any vibration, someone walking across the floor, a door closing, a truck passing outside, would shift it slightly, and you'd lose the signal again. The antenna segments would loosen over time, refusing to stay extended, slowly collapsing like a telescope that had given up. You'd extend it fully, walk away, and return to find it had retracted halfway, the picture now unwatchable. Some people used tape to hold the segments in place. Others jammed small pieces of paper into the joints, and a few just held the antenna at the right angle while watching, which was uncomfortable but effective. The antenna tips would bend or break off, and replacement antennas were hard to find and often didn't fit properly, so you'd end up with a portable TV that had a crooked, shortened antenna that barely worked. My grandmother always said, "That little TV was my companion in the kitchen for 15 years. She meant it literally. Her 9-inch black and white Panasonic sat on the kitchen counter from 1982 to 1997, always plugged in, antenna always extended and pointing northwest toward the towers, always tuned to Channel 7 for her afternoon stories. The picture was never great, but it was good enough, and she could watch her soap operas while peeling potatoes, chopping vegetables, and stirring pots. When that TV finally died, she mourned it like a pet, and the replacement, a small color TV with better reception, never felt quite the same. Black and white models were cheaper and more common in the early 1980s, holdovers from a technology that was already outdated but still functional and affordable. A 5-inch black and white portable could be had for $60 to $80, making it accessible to teenagers and college students who couldn't afford color. The black and white picture was actually sharper than early color portable TVs because the tube technology was simpler and more mature. Colors on early portable color TVs were often oversaturated and unrealistic. People had orange skin, grass was neon green, and skies were electric blue, but it was color, and that mattered more than accuracy. Color portable TVs cost significantly more, $150 to $300 for a decent model, and the color tubes were less reliable than black and white tubes, prone to color drift, where one color would dominate the picture, turning everything reddish or greenish. You'd adjust the color and tint controls constantly, trying to get flesh tones that looked remotely human, but the adjustments never held. The picture would look good for a week, then gradually shift until you had to readjust again. Some TVs had automatic color adjustment features that were supposed to maintain proper color balance, but these rarely worked well and sometimes made things worse. They were good enough when good enough was all we had. Mechanical timer light switches were home security essentials in the 1980s, installed in place of regular light switches to turn lights on and off automatically when you were away. These switches featured a rotating dial marked with hours, and you'd push small pins in or out to set when lights should turn on and off. They cost $15 to $40 and made a quiet ticking sound as the dial rotated, a sound that became part of the house's nighttime symphony, barely noticeable until it stopped. The installation process itself was a weekend project that fathers took seriously. You'd shut off the circuit breaker, remove the old switch plate, and wire in the timer according to instructions that seemed clear until you actually started following them. The dial was usually cream-colored plastic with black numbers, and those little pins, dozens of them around the circumference, could be pushed in to turn the light on or pulled out to turn it off. Each pin represented 15 minutes, and setting up a convincing someone's home pattern required careful planning and a surprising amount of thought about your own daily routines. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. Burglars would think someone was home if lights turned on at 7 p.m. and off at 11 p.m. every night. Entire neighborhoods installed these timers in the early 1980s after a rash of break-ins, and hardware stores couldn't keep them in stock. People felt safer, more secure, like they'd outsmarted potential criminals with nothing more than a $25 device and some strategic pin placement. My grandmother always said, "A lit house is a safe house," and she had timers on 3 different switches, living room, bedroom, and porch, all coordinated to create the illusion of someone moving through the house at predictable intervals. The reality was far less impressive than the marketing promised. The mechanical timer would drift over time, running a few minutes slow or fast, and after a few months, your carefully planned 7 p.m. light-on time might actually happen at 6:45 or 7:15. The pins would fall out, just pop loose for no apparent reason, and you'd come home to find your bedroom light had been on all day, or your living room had stayed dark all evening. Worse yet, you'd forget to adjust for daylight saving time, and suddenly your lights would turn on at noon and off at 4 p.m., advertising to everyone that nobody was home because nobody would choose those hours deliberately. The ticking sound became either comforting or maddening, depending on your personality. Some people found it soothing, proof that the timer was working, that the mechanism was doing its job, that security was just a rotating dial away. Others couldn't stand it, especially in bedrooms where the constant tick-tick-tick kept them awake, or made them hyper-aware of time passing. You could hear it clearly in quiet moments, and guests would sometimes ask, "What's that sound?" forcing you to explain your security system like you were revealing classified information. By the mid-1990s, people started questioning whether these timers actually deterred burglars or just wasted electricity. Professional thieves knew about timer switches and could spot the patterns, lights that turned on and off at exactly the same time, every single night, weren't fooling anyone who was paying attention. The timers became more of a ritual than actual security, something you set up because it felt responsible, because your insurance company recommended it, because everyone else on the block had them. By 2000, digital timers appeared with better accuracy, multiple on-off cycles per day, and battery backup that kept them running during power outages. These new timers cost $30 to $60, but offered programmability that made the old mechanical dials look primitive. You could set different patterns for different days, randomize the timing slightly to seem more realistic, and never worry about pins falling out or dials drifting. The mechanical timers started their migration to junk drawers and basement storage boxes, replaced by superior technology that did the same job better. By 2010, smart home systems made all dedicated timers obsolete. Suddenly, you could control your lights from anywhere in the world using your smartphone, turn them on and off at truly random intervals, and even adjust brightness to make it look like someone was actually moving through the house. The old mechanical timers became relics of a simpler, more analog approach to home security, physical devices that did one job with gears and springs instead of apps and algorithms. Now they're still found in older homes, their dials frozen at positions that haven't changed in years, their pins missing or stuck in place, their ticking silenced by motors that finally gave up. Sometimes you'll see one in a house that hasn't been updated since the 1980s, still mounted on the wall, still wired in, but no longer functional. The plastic has yellowed, the numbers have faded, and the mechanism that once rotated faithfully through 24-hour cycles has seized up completely. Electricians find them during renovation projects and hold them up like archaeological artifacts, asking homeowners if they want to keep them or finally upgrade to something modern. Most people choose to upgrade, but a few keep the old timers as reminders of a time when home security meant mechanical devices you could see and hear working, when protecting your house required physical pins and rotating dials instead of invisible wireless signals and cloud-based programming. The mechanical timer light switch represented a particular moment in home technology, the point where automation became affordable and accessible to average families, where you didn't need to be wealthy or technically sophisticated to have devices that controlled your environment automatically. It was democratized technology, sold at hardware stores and installed by homeowners with basic tools and moderate confidence. It promised security and delivered a sense of control, even if the actual security benefits were questionable. Looking back, these timers were transitional technology, bridges between the fully manual world of the past and the fully automated world of the future. They required human intervention to set up and maintain, but once programmed, they ran independently, doing their job without supervision or input. They were smart enough to be useful, but dumb enough to fail in predictable ways. A portable TV with the telescoping antenna tells of a teenager who wanted independence, who saved money to buy their own TV so they could watch what they wanted without family negotiations. These gadgets weren't just objects. They were the texture of daily life in the 1980s, the sounds and smells and rituals that made a house feel like home. They represented optimism about technology, belief that convenience would make life better, faith that the future would be easier than the past. Your parents bought that bread machine or that electric knife. They were buying into a vision of domestic life where technology handled the tedious parts, where machines made everything simpler and faster, where the future was something to embrace rather than fear.